Cuív.
Ich an Corle, tá an gwil deisiam couple focal rá faoin mille ergilis. As camera nach gwil an iritsin an gyn gnáchine, as bo eilam spaint alaid atá an. No is féidilam an lúchara a haulus rin ergilis, nur an fórsid leisgeil gan einio hórtim liana go chunne be. Agus sin díra go rinne siad. Noi, mae dhéantar socrú, fwy Brexit, no bratamocht, tá an chúis a bhí acab gan ein rud a thuairt. Imiche, ach a bheice muid a dara cáinasnéis. A bheice muid iad a teachtar eis rá, well, bhí a leisceal a bhí ein imiche, agus inis tá muid an anna bheith griú leis a bobbal go móverí túd, tá an anchuid, ach tá min abras. Tá min abras a bheice muid é sin, agus idir an dáilín, tá costas gachrod a gáil suas, agus ag an am céanna, i léon solachar go dhéanna, góib siúd atá bra ar incom leas a hóisiala. Ceann Comhairle, the devil is always in the detail. And you can create great illusions of generosity. But then when you actually examine the effect, you see that these magnificent gestures are actually not what they appear to be. Section 3 of the bill increases the value of the home carer credit from €1,500 to €1,600. Of course, what's involved here is a tax credit. Not money, but a tax credit. So first of all, this does not apply to anybody who is not in the income tax bracket. But we'll accept that since it is an income tax credit, you weren't trying to help that group of people anyway. But let's look at what's involved and the largesse that you've just handed to those that are in the tax bracket. But for those, and these will be a large number of these people because by definition the home carer tax credit means that you're in among the income family. For those that are in this bracket and have a 20% rate of tax, it's an extra tax credit of €100 a year, which means that 20%, that the beneficiary will be €20 a year, actually less than that if you divide by 52 weeks rather than 50, so slightly less than €20 a year better off, or in other words, less than 40 cents a week. What a magnificent gesture. Now, when we look at the earned relief, we find the same sleight of hand. I cannot understand why you just didn't go and give the same earned relief as is already available to PAYE workers. €1,650 a year. But what did you do? You increased it from €1,350 to €1,500. Again, an increase of €150 per annum in the credit. Now, if you're paying tax at the 20% rate, it means another extra amount of €30 a year, which is 60 cents a week. If you're paying tax at 40%, which is the top rate of tax, it gives you €1.20 extra a week. When I was young, there was a saying, all that glisters is not gold. Well, certainly, when you announced this, it gave an illusion of gold. But when the take-home pay goes up 30 cents or 40 cents, I think people will say, is that all I got? Now, another reality, of course, of what's been very, very cleverly done year after year by this government is the erosion of the true value of the tax credits. The 1,650 employee credit and personal credit, and double that, of course, for the married credit, has been the same since 2010. But every year, inexorably, of course, there's a 2% erosion of that, and incomes are now beginning to go up. And you're getting this domino effect that those who weren't paying any tax are now paying some tax without raising anything or appearing to raise it, because the value of money is dropping, and that those who are in the 20% are moving into the 40% rate of tax. And there's no corresponding relief, and therefore you are inexorably increasing the tax rates without appearing to do so. In other words, to stand still, there would have to be a cost of living increase every year in tax bands, in tax credits, etc., or otherwise you're collecting more and more tax. And when you look at the tax take every year, you see this effect very, very clearly in the income tax take. I have to say, I really have to criticise the government on not honouring the commitment to eliminate the USC. We have made our tax system incredibly complicated for the ordinary person to work out. Somebody who has to fill small tax reform and wants to calculate the tax liability and to verify that it has worked out correctly would need a degree in mathematics at times to do so. I have from the very beginning believed that as the economy grew, we should have eliminated systematically the USC starting from the bottom up. The 0.5% rate that raises €60 from every taxpayer who's earning more than €12,000 a year probably raises considerable money, but puts people on €12,000 a year into the tax bracket. I know there are well-to-do people who believe everybody should pay taxes, but what they don't say is, of course everybody pays taxes. I don't know anybody in this country who lives in this country who doesn't pay taxes. They pay taxes on everything they buy. They pay excise duties. The only thing they don't pay is income tax. But those who cannot afford it, those who we have to give social welfare to, those who we have to give family income supplement to, it's a total nonsense to be taking income tax off them because they cannot afford to pay it. And therefore, I think it's time we got away from this nonsense that there are some people exempt from taxes. And in fact, what we do know is proportionately of their income, those on the lowest incomes tend to proportionally pay more indirect taxes than others. Now, Minister, the carbon tax was raised and we have supported that. However, what I don't support is the fact that that carbon tax was meant to be ring-fenced. And this finance bill brings in the carbon tax, that it was meant to be ring-fenced for reinvesting so that those who would be hit by it disproportionately would find that they got compensation in other ways. Now, you made a big thing about giving an extra fuel allowance, which is good for those on fuel allowance. But as I pointed out time and again, particularly those who are in houses who have very poor thermal qualities, or the old who are in their own houses all day and have to heat them all day, or those, for example, of the travelling community who live in mobile homes, caravans that are very hard to heat, they're going to actually bear the brunt of this carbon tax and nothing's been done for them to deal with those issues. Trying to get the special heating allowance that used to be available from the community welfare officers off the Department of Social Welfare since this government came to power requires the filling of an 8-page form. And then we look at rural Ireland. Unnecessarily rural Ireland, because of the absolutely abysmal public bus services provided by the Minister of Transport, who says that he's no responsibility for anything, forces people in rural Ireland to disproportionately use buses or use motor cars. I would have thought that a proportion of the money would have been used to do two things in that regard. One, to reduce the fares so that the fares per kilometre in rural areas would be the same as that in the urban areas. And the second one is to provide services on the main radial routes, particularly out of towns with large employment hospitals and with third-level institutions, right up until late evening, up to 10 and 11 o'clock at night, instead of cutting off these services at 6 in the evening, which means that you have to leave work or study area. But nothing was done with this pot of money you suddenly were raising to allow people reduce their carbon bill in the area that you say is very carbon dependent. There is a provision in this bill in relation to food supplements, where you're going to introduce a VAT rate of 13.5%. Now, my understanding is that that arose from a ruling by the Revenue Commissioners that food supplements were not food and therefore should not have been zero-rated VAT in the past. I also understand that this matter has been challenged in the courts. And I further understand that if you introduce it at 13.5%, under EU rules, once you do that, you cannot go back to a 0%. And therefore, my simple question is, why did you not defer this matter until the courts have given a ruling as to whether they are food or not, and therefore should have been, and were correctly, zero VAT rated? And therefore, it seems to me that for whatever reason, money raising or whatever, the government want actually to positively hit these people with a 13.5% tax rate. Now, I know the government are going to say, well, we're so generous, we didn't put the 23% tax rate on you. Well, my counter to that is, you could have put a 9% on, but there's no need to put an any percent on until we get the result of the court. And my view is that that particular provision of this bill should be taken out of it, and that matter put in abeyance until you get a court decision as to whether it was legally correct that they were at 0%. And if that is the situation, under EU law, you can leave them, I understand, at 0% tax. I noticed that the threshold for capital acquisition tax, which is where a parent is giving or leaves money to a family, a direct family member, is been raised from €320,000 to €335,000. It's an increase of 15,000. I'm sure it will be welcomed by all those inheriting that kind of money. It's not a huge amount of money, as it appears, because, of course, the rate is at 33%, and you're probably talking about a once-in-a-lifetime payment. But I think we have to welcome this, because with house prices going through the ceiling, there will be more and more people inheriting a little extra money. And I think an awful lot of people use that kind of money, if they're left, for their own family members, etc. And I do welcome that provision in the budget. Matome de kainte de Oireachtas. Camera goel an diumorum. Go to go what is more adequate. Go na háisiín is the forbara timmo go Gaeltacht na mar tugu uairháin eile gúdras na Gaeltachta. Agus is cosúil nach bhfuil meascmádaí go rialta seo an údras an obair ann siad, nach bhfuil éon tuiscint a chuir an tábhacht go mbeidh fostaíocht a fáil san Gaeltacht le go bhainteann na daoine ann le go mairthaí an teanga. Tá a dáil go thomláin ar seo. Tá mé cinnte go mo chomhlaici seo na caine duine dheithil. Ach níl sé sách má. Ní léir go bhfuil éon spéis ag an air Gaeltachta an tara Madigan sa scéal dubban na díomhach. Ná tuiscint eice ar an tábhacht a bhainant leis an Gaeilge agus leis an Gaeltacht. Ag am go bhfuil bródig muinte na héir in a bhd a géin as tú héin gus as a muinte agus as an áit ar asiad is déir nach bhfuil an bród ceanna go rialtas. Tharla go raibh America fi hóim líana. Bhí mé le go réid in Montana áit bhfuil cuasaí Gaeilge ar bonnas tis an ollscoileann sin, agus an spéis ag daoine go Locht Éireannach sa scéal, is iad a fólam na Gaeilge agus a teachtar eis go héiring. A chu ríiste eis, aineoin na méid deáil a chohainte sin a fud a dain gairing, is tíos cuid go na ollscoileannaí is umráite ar dain. Aineoin na méid cainte diontar ar an diaspora fud a dain. Ní léir go bhfuil go fiú leis an rialtas, forbar díonna ar a ggócheangail seo. It has always amazed me how little we spend, particularly on our indigenous culture, and I am very interested in all culture from APRA. I think that art and all these things should be promoted. But I think we should always keep in our mind that there's one culture, that's Irish culture, that's unique to this island that we have spread throughout the world, but we are still the wellspring of it. And Irish dance, Irish music, Irish language is a huge identifier for us, and there hasn't ever been a minister who's been sent abroad on an IDA or an I, particularly on the Enterprise Ireland missions, trying to engender more business for Ireland, that haven't used these unique identifiers to try to get our message across. So every time you are doing the hard sell of goods abroad, they use Irish music, they use Irish dance, Irish imagery, but still we refuse to make the investment in one of the greatest natural resources we have, our culture. I don't know whether it's because it's intangible, but I do know that there cannot be a minister in this government who's gone abroad who hasn't said to themselves, I never realised the economic potential of culture to do business with. And again, Minister, the investment in the Irish language in this budget was abysmal. 1 million extra in capital for Údarás na Gaeltachta. When you take out the extra administrative costs arising for Údarás, virtually nothing for the Irish language. And still, we boast that we promote our heritage. It mightn't seem to be a matter for the finance bill. It isn't, because there's no reference to anything cultural that I can find of in the finance bill. And I have to say I find that quite shocking.